Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Waiver Wire Show. You got me, Rotomancer, Eric, and I'm going to be running the show solo tonight. We still don't have Ethan. Ethan's got some real life changes going on, and he's going to be out of commission for a bit. And in the meantime, um, it's going to be a one man show. So, that said, tonight's show will also be a shorter one because I'm also writing blurbs on the website, supposedly as of now. But of course, we're going to make time for your questions and for me to dish out my waiver wire suggestions for y'all. All right. Let's just do this really quickly. Maybe go team by team. Do it a quick hit style, perhaps. That should work. Uh, let's just run through who do we got? All right. We got the Hawks. Huh. I don't know how many, probably in 12 team leagues, there might have been ads, drops of AJ Griffin. And um, I don't see any need for AJ Griffin to be um, on the waiver wire because he was actually playing well, regardless of the return of DeAndre Hunter. Um, the news that both John Collins and DeJounte Murray being questionable for Monday's game has come out. So the return of both of those guys um, should impact AJ Griffin, but I still consider him um, a reasonably decent hold for now, and just see how how it all pans out um, in that situation with the Hawks. Other than that, obviously somebody like Jalen Johnson should be dropped. Um, yeah, there. That's it for the Hawks. On to the Nets. Interestingly enough, as far as I'm concerned, I'm washing my hands off usual streamers like Yuta Watanabe, TJ Warren, and Seth Curry, etc., etc. Um, for now, all right? They've been producing really lackluster numbers, and when they do pop with decent value, it's been rather hard to predict outside of Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Nick Claxton, um, to some degree Ben Simmons, it's really hard to find value on this Nets squad. One guy, however, I do recommend because he went through a bit of a negative period of production, and that's Royce O'Neal. Now he missed like a couple of games for personal reasons, and prior to that, he was on a bit of a slide. Now he shot the ball a lot better today in tonight's game, for example, against the Pistons, I believe. Yeah, um, it's nothing amazing, all right, but he returned to the starting lineup in the other game. He logged 32 minutes tonight. He hit three threes, scored 11 points. Fine, decent field goal. Nothing much to speak of on defense, but he is a defender. And aside from Claxton and obviously the natural skills of KD, there is no other really solid defender in that front court or wing area. Ben Simmons, is still technically, guard or point guard as far as I'm concerned. Um, now, uh, there. And Royce O'Neal is somebody who I've seen dropped in one of my 16 team leagues. And there, I think that that's pretty much somebody that I would have picked up if I had the moves. Unfortunately, I didn't have the moves anymore in that 16 teamer. Otherwise, I would have picked him up. All right, we have our first question for the night, and I'll jump on that. Just okay. Is Rozier, I assume that, yeah, that's obviously Terry Rozier, officially a failed draft pick? Every time he plays, my blood pressure goes up. Um, if you actually look at it, Oren, uh, Rozier has been playing better than his uh, first month and change. Now that we're transitioning, there have been several games when he shot the ball well, or at least better from the field. So that, at least in that regard, he's been trending up. The reason for his poor value overall to the season, if you look at his season value so far on per game basis, it's been dragged down by multiple games where he shot poorly. And I think that that was just a slow start. I don't think that I really think it's too early to call him a fantasy draft bust at this time. I think that he still has some room to improve. And you will also have to take into context that during that period where he was struggling, that was the time where LaMelo Ball was out. Now that LaMelo is back, he's going to have somebody else, bringing the ball down, passing. So many of these other things that Rozier doesn't necessarily want to do or have to do. Okay, with Lamelo there, passing him the ball, he can focus on just scoring and maybe a little bit of defense. And hopefully, with Lamelo there, the field goal will slowly tick up now that they're sharing the backcourt together. I'm actually of the belief that Rozier is going to trend up and will be bouncing back from that poorer start. Good. It is a good question. I mean, I wouldn't be a seller. Okay, I know he's probably frustrating um, on and off, but my feel is that the trend will be more positive as we close out 2022 and begin 2023. Well, thank you for your question. All right. Um, moving on now. Uh, taking into account the Boston Celtics situation. Uh, Frankly, I've been a bit disappointed with Grant Williams' production as of late. Like, if you will look at what he did tonight, it was rather disappointing, and it's only going to get worse now that Time Lord is back. Um, Grant Williams was serviceable as an end of bench guy in standard leagues, but he might be a drop depending on whether or not he's able to keep it up, right? Okay. Um, but it's a wait and see situation. Things are a bit fluid there. If you recall, the Celtics also, as a team collectively, went through a rough patch. And and you have to take into account that whenever teams collectively struggle like that, stats will suffer across the board, and those have brought down a lot of Grant Williams' averages so far in recent games. So I'm not too happy with him. We have another question. All right. Excuse me. Thank you, OJ, for your question, by the way. Which two would you drop? 13 team, 9 cat head to head. Thank you for putting in context, by the way. And that's, before I get to your question, that's something I'd like to tell everyone who comes into the show while I'm streaming it live. If you're going to ask a question, it's always better or more helpful to me to help you out if you put in the details of your league, like what OJ did. Um, he's only punting turnovers. Okay, the options of two to drop are Jalen Williams, Tari Eason, uh, Dante DiVincenzo, Grimes, and Fultz. Whoa. All right. Who would you drop? Hmm. All right. Just by looking at the list that you of names that you gave me now, I can see that you're leaning more on a kind of a small ball-ish setup here. Um, Off the top, I will just do a reverse order. I will start naming names of guys I'd rather keep. Okay. I'll start with Fultz. I'm definitely keeping Fultz. Uh, I'm I'd probably still keep Grimes since you're punting turnovers, but he can get a bit frustrating as far as shooting efficiency from the field is concerned. So he's a bit on thin ice as far as I'm concerned. Jalen Williams is somebody I like because he's um, what I call a drawback kind of guy. He's generally not going to hurt you in any area in particular. But unfortunately, he hasn't been able to tap into um, a lot of the upside that I actually see in him. A lot of the games he's been producing have been okay, but not great. So he probably might be somebody I'd consider dropping in a league that shallow. Uh, ah, if any of you have been on watching this show in the past, I'm a stubborn dumbass. If you want to call me a dumbass, it's all right. I've never dropped any of my Terry Eason shares. I'm not gonna drop any of my Terry Eason shares, but you might if the minutes go are too inconsistent, the production's too inconsistent, and you need a more viable player actively playing in that slot, fine. But I'd rather drop probably DiVincenzo. Even though DiVincenzo, given the absence of Steph Curry, might be better than Terry, I am convinced, rightly or wrongly, which we'll probably find out at the end of the season, that he, Eason, is still somebody who can break out in the second half or hopefully sooner. Maybe when the Rockets offload. I mean, just think about it. They're I read this article by a beat writer who covers the Rockets, and guys like Eric Gordon and KJ Martin in particular, who's expressed interest in leaving the team. Eric Gordon, who is a 3 point shooter who has been linked to teams like the Lakers, for example. These are the guys that the Rockets can offload. Now, um, if the Rockets somehow offload both of those guys, we're gonna see a ton more minutes from Eason. The problem with Eason, he's just simply not getting enough playing time, not enough usage. But as you saw from summer, okay, I know I've got hooked on that stupid summer league high. I fell in love with the numbers, but I think he's really talented. I beyond just focusing on what he averaged over summer league. I think Terry Eason is capable of playing a solid two-way game. Making an impact on both ends of the court, rebounding, posting a 1-1-1, etc. Fine, you might encounter some uh, shooting inefficiency here and there, but the guy can break out even if he produces a fraction of what he did in summer league, where he was averaging a crazy double double. Um, he's still going to be good. Maybe not in 12-team leagues, but the fact that you're in a 13-team league, I wouldn't blame you if you chose Eason to be your drop because your league is that shallow. There will be enough bad games from Eason moving forward that he might likely be a drop by someone else who picked him up. So if you decide to drop him now, that's going to be okay. Maybe somebody else will drop him later. He's somebody that you might be able to come back to. And I really think you will want to come back to him later on. And that's why I've been, taking losses, probably too many. So I really have to revisit that on Eason. But there, short answer, I will drop DiVincenzo and Eason in your case. Okay. Probably, okay, no. Heck with that. Drop Jalen Williams over Eason. Heck with it. Heck with it. I like them both. I like what I saw from Jalen Williams in Summer League. But as far as I'm concerned, Eason still has the higher upside despite um, playing behind so many other guys in the rotation. Now, you might say, "Hey, Eric, that's like the stupid situation over at the Pacers. Look at Jalen Smith, who's like rotting on the bench right now, playing fewer than like 12 minutes or 15 minutes. Same thing with Isaiah Jackson, who's already been a drop, even though we've been hearing or reading from Brewski, tweeting, yeah, he's been hard to hold, but the upside is really still there, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to wait for a trade of Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, et cetera, et cetera. But no, um, I think that the situation of the Rockets is much better or much more conducive for them to actually pull off a trade um, before the Pacers. Why? Because the Pacers actually show that they can go on reasonably good winning streaks. And if you're winning, there's no reason to rock the boat too much unless you're further improving your future assets without sacrificing your stability. The loss of Buddy Hield is something that's going to be huge for the Pacers. And mark my word, if he leaves, um, they're going to have to lean on Aaron Neesmith, who, by the way, since we're on a waiver wire show, uh, is somebody I'd recommend picking up. Uh, but I am aware, don't worry, I am aware that the Pacers do have 2 games. But come on, the guy did like what 23-10 and like 4 threes, career highs in points and boards. Uh, he's going nowhere. Um, and that's part of the concern I have for my shares of Jalen Smith. The better that Neesmith plays, the worse the long term outlook for Jalen Smith is going to be. But that said, um, Neesmith is somebody to consider. Uh, I added here just to share because these are real moves by real GMs and talking about here. At some point in this week I picked up Neesmith, I picked up Terrence Davis, um, and that was in a matchup where I was up against Tyler Harrow, um, and who else was that? That oh, Jordan Clarkson, who both exploded for massive amounts of 3 point shooting and points, etc., etc. I was uh, way behind, obviously, after this huge career week from Harrow. Um, I was behind threes, but thanks to Neesmith tonight, Terrence Davis's decent game in the Kings' last game, I caught up. I've now overtaken um, my opponent, uh, and I think I'm gonna finish the week 8-1. Knock on wood. It's not the night's not over, but hey, 8-1. All right. Um, and there. So I like Terrence Davis, even though that Kevin Herter came back. I think he's somebody that if you don't want to hold on to, it's okay. You can stream him for his threes. But mind you, he's one of the few 3 point shooters who do shoot threes at a reasonably solid field goal rate. He just can commit too many turnovers if you're playing a nightcat. In weirdly enough, for a catch and shoot kind of guy, Terrence Davis can commit more turnovers than you'd expect. So there, just be mindful of that. And again, sorry, reminder to everyone: this is going to be a shortened show. I'm not going to be staying on for the full hour, unfortunately. So I'll make sure I get to all your questions first as a higher priority over sharing my thoughts on waiver wire pickups because I want to address your specific needs, and that though those might be something that'll be better. All right, whoa, this is probably the heaviest question, excuse me, I've gotten since running solo for the last 2 weeks now. Um, OG or AntMan ROS? Whoa. Okay. Per game, Nick, uh, probably OG. Games played imputed into the mix, as far as looking at them ROS. And I think knowing you, you're probably playing head to head. I'll just assume by default head to head. AntMan might end up playing a few more games, more than a few more games than OG. OG's already missed time now. Um, Regardless of the fantastic leap he's shown, it's already established, as far as I'm concerned at least, that OG is an injury prone mofo. Um, I love the leap. Don't get me wrong. I'm one of those OG fans. Don't get me wrong. Um, but I'd rather uh, take Ant Man because I think he's going to play more games, even though I think OG might stabilize and deliver um, value that I might prefer on a per game basis. But if you take into account the totals produced, okay, totals, ROS, or let's call it EOS by end of season, I think AntMan will produce more counting stats totaled at the end of the season than OG. He's already ahead, way ahead, because of the missed time of OG. So I'm just taking into the whole season completed as the bigger picture perspective here, and that's how I'm looking at it. Of course, it's hard to ignore the steals of OG, the threes, the efficiency, the the low turnovers compared to Ant-Man, of course. But um, I am not convinced that D'Angelo Russell is going to sustain what he was sustaining before his injury. Um, that means I think that the mantle of primary or best fantasy asset is going to shift back to Edwards at some point as the season progresses, or maybe in the coming weeks or games. And that said, I think Atman will still um, is still capable of uh, how should I say, pulling up his averages. He really is damn talented and is able to do pretty much everything on both ends. Not much unlike OG. It's just that Ant Man is more stable as far as um, what you call this history of explosive games. And that's another factor that a lot of people don't consider when they're weighing player comparisons. You might just look at it that, all right, these are per game numbers. Who has better per game? Fine. Assuming OG will have better per game value, Ant Man can save you a specific weekly matchup or win you a specific weekly matchup just after a huge Ant-Man type game. You know what I mean? And that's a swing factor that you're not necessarily gonna see from OG because the big three of the Raptors, OG, Van Vliet, and Siakam, they're almost always run to the ground in terms of minutes played, given the weird ass rotations of Nick Nurse, and that's a bit of a headache. Um, if OG was somebody I had, obviously he was somebody drafted much later than Ant Man in most leagues, and if he was a luxury bonus pop and value guy that I had, it was good. But if I'm going to consider swapping him for somebody who was drafted that early, probably not. So I'd lean Ant Man for the rest of the season. Um, and that's who I'd rather have. Uh, I just to share, there we have in this one particular 16 team league of mine, somebody I describe as a tinkerer. He almost always he's like a chronic trader. He's never happy with his team. I personally get messages. Well, used to get messages at least once a week with this and that offer. He offloaded his Edwards in a package. And the rest of the package is he offloaded Zion and Edwards for somebody for anyway. He has both Edwards and OG on his team. He opted to offload Edwards and keep OG despite OJ still being injured. And uh, it's not necessarily um, indicative of the inherent better value that OG was holding for ROS outlook, because it's also possible that he couldn't get max value for OG because at the time of the trade, Anunoby was injured. So, but I think from a preference standpoint, that manager in particular, who is third in the rankings, 16 team, 9 cat head to head. So he's actually, managing his team quite well. So he knows his shtick. Um, so OG is somebody he preferred to have as the anchor for his steals and points and threes. Okay. All right. I'll get to another question. By the way, thanks guys. Um, Welcome to some of you latecomers, and to everyone who's already asked questions. I highly appreciate it. I love interacting with all of you, and I'm gonna do my best to give you the best insight possible, as coming from somebody who watches the box scores every night, lives on Twitter um, every night. All right. All right. So, Mr. C, 12 team head to head, 9 cat. I have too many centers. Holy crap. I wish I had that first world problem, because in most of my leagues, which are 16 team, we have two center slots and centers. Okay. It's so bad. Sorry. I'll get to your question momentarily. Just to give you an idea of how bad your situation makes me feel. I can't even drop Hartenstein. That's how desperate I am for centers, and that's how dry our waiver wires are when it comes to centers. Okay. Um, so your question is, you will need to trade one of either Mitchell Robinson, or Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren will probably end up rebounding at a better and more consistent rate ROS than Robinson. That said, Robinson will be blocking shots more consistently than Duren, even if Duren does, improve as the season progresses. So, the answer to your question is a needs based caveat, or sorry, predicate. Depending on what you need more, that's who you'll keep. If you need rebounds more, keep Duren, trade Mitch Rob, and try to get equivalent value or good value coming from a player or players that will provide what you need. Remember, as we try to um, improve on our team's weaknesses, it's often a dangerous game to inadvertently, I was about to say accidentally, but you can't really act, or unknowingly over trade stuff that you are supposed to win. Okay. All right. For context, thank you for sharing. You already have Time Lord and JJJ. Huh. So, what that tells me is you will have your blocks and you need boards. So, I would say I'd trade Mitch Rob. And now's a good time to trade Mitch Rob, because he's actually been playing a lot better lately, right? Right. So, if you want to sell high, now's the time to sell high, because the Knicks are winning. Mitch Rob is playing better, and now is the time. I mean, let's not let me qualify that. Let's not call it exactly sell high, but sell to get as good a return as possible, right? Because he can slump. I mean, if you're gonna do a sales talk and message another manager, you can insert those screenshots of Mitch Robinson's value for the week, for example. You can highlight that his blocks per game over his recent games are so and so high, and that's your sales pitch right there, right? And you'll probably get a better return in exchange for him right now, as opposed to Duren, who is seen more as a project. Yeah, yeah. All right. Um, okay. So you need. Let me just put it on screen. You need an SG. So who to target? That's a really tough question. That is not something I can answer in a vacuum. Unfortunately, I will. All right. I will do my best and figure out. Okay, ah, it's really hard. Okay, even if I do it this way and pull up so many resources and figure out shooting guards with close enough value to um, Mitchell Robinson over the last week or 2 weeks, they're not necessarily gonna be guys who are available. Okay, because Mitchell Robinson over the last week has been a top 30 player. Crazy. So what? I can't throw out Drew Holiday, for example, or Mikal Bridges. Neither can I offer you up Austin Reeves. So it's really weird. Um, but who? All right, I am gonna filter for 2 weeks. Let's let's go easy on the hype because maybe the manager won't. Hey, still a top 30 guy. Um, Again, Holiday's name is showing up. Again, he's not somebody who's someone you're gonna realistically get. Okay, I don't know if the guy's gonna let him go. You might want to look into this is just as close to it as possible. All right, I'll throw some names over the past 2 weeks of guys in the neighborhood or of realistic exchanges. Dinwiddie, lower than Mitch Rob. The Bogdanoviches, both. Well, fine. Only Bogdan is um, SG eligible, so he's viable. But he healed. Um, DiVincenzo apparently, but I find him Uh, Vassell, Devin Vassell. Okay, Devin Vassell is somebody I would consider realistic. All right, and somebody whom you can look at as a target. So Devin Vassell, Buddy Hield, etc. Those are just some random names. But again, I'd like to stress. All right, um, I think that giving advice in a vacuum is like this is really difficult. I'm not going to be able to give you um, optimal advice because it's really specific to your league, specific to the managers. I need to see rosters of everyone, and it'll be a whole longer process that'll take up so much more time. But I hope those names that I threw out there out of a quick stat dig for last 2 weeks work out for you somehow. All right. Just like that, Rozier is out for the game. Hip contusion. Absolute garbage. Sorry. All right. Fair enough. Can't argue with what happened tonight, which does suck because I do have one share of Rozier. Uh, so, if you want to offload your Rozier, offload Rozier. But probably wait when he comes back. He's giving you high blood pressure. I value the health of our listeners and viewers. So please, either see your doctor or offload Rozier, whichever's cheaper. So I guess Rozier is cheaper. Um, yeah, it's been rough. All right, so somebody wants an opinion on a trade. So he gave Anthony Simons and Jalen Duren for Ingram. Fine. Oh, I don't know. So it's something that you're trying to offer or already offered or accepted. I don't know. Hini mini. Uh, Let me tell you this. Okay. I was really high on Anthony Simons, um, the highest actually among everyone in the sports ethos inner circle. I was the one who said that Simons was grossly, grossly underrated based on ADP. And yes, he can fluctuate with too much high variance as a headache. But take a look at his field goal, his threes, his points. It's just a matter of time. So my answer to you, you might be throwing in Duran for free, um, in this case, but a Simons Ingram swap might end up actually being a wash based on ROS value, as far as I'm concerned. Uh, if you're really hot for Ingram, sure, but if you think about it, Simons is going to give you more threes, um, probably better assists, and the field goal that he's giving as of late is, in fact, correct me if I'm wrong, still better than the pre-injury field goal that Ingram was giving. So, what are you really getting? Probably more consistent points, but by how much really? Think about it. What are you? So you're giving up probably too much. Um, I would not mind offloading Simons. My suggestion is to go for someone else. You can keep the package as is. Offer Simons and Duran since you are punting rebounds. Find but I knew where you were going here. You were looking at those skinny forwards um, type of archetype, right? And that's why you were looking at Ingram. But the guy's not shooting enough threes this season for him to really matter for your team. And if you are guard heavy, allow me to infer here, you're trying to win, points, threes, assists, steals. Uh, Ingram's not gonna steal more than Simons. He might pass more than Simons, especially while Lillard is not injured. So, but he's not gonna shoot more threes than Simons for sure. And like I said, field goal will be a wash, unless you're also punting field goal. Then that's a different story. Okay. All right. Interesting question here. Who would you rather have, ROS, Shingun, or Time Lord? All right. I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest here. I was one of the people who was not so high on Shingun heading into the season. Yes, I've been getting a lot of jibes from people who have been seeing Shingun shine every so often, but not as consistently as I'd prefer for my own tastes. That said, um, Williams is coming off surgery. There's no telling exactly how long it's going to take for him to get close to or back to last season's averages, if he even will. Gotcha. Um, so if you want to play it safe, okay, you'd want Shingun. And if you're not necessarily trying to win blocks, but if you want sheer upside, who, I mean, assuming Williams catches up even by a little bit, he will exceed Shingun's per game value easily. Easily. Why? Consistent close to 60% field goal, something just like under 10 rebounds, obviously, flirting with double double. but you're gonna have a guy who's gonna give you 2.5 blocks, maybe not close to what he did last season, but let's say 2 blocks per game. Shingun's never gonna give you 2 blocks per game this year. It might be something that he can evolve to in the future, but that's not really his style. Okay. Uh, so if you want the upside and you want the blocks, Time Lord's your guy. You want assists, you're punting TOs, maybe Shingo. All right. But 9 cat, it's part of your definition there. I'm sorry, description of your league. 9 cat on 9 cat value ROS. I'd lean on Time Lord. Maybe I'm too much of a Shingun hater. Uh, just being transparent here. Uh, okay, fine. Let me qualify that again. I wouldn't call myself a Shingun hater. I like the guy. All right. I actually sat on that mofo for most of last season. And don't call it, you know, being a sour grapey, wherever. But um I see I'm coming from a place where I actually saw the upside of the guy. So I can't really hate on him, in quotes hate, but not really. I can't really hate on the guy. It's just that I when during my preparation for this season, I didn't earmark him as somebody who would live up to the potential of the hype that he had, based on ADP, based on mock drafts. He was just too hyped and picked too early for my tastes. So yeah, um, just to put it on the screen for everyone to appreciate. Mini says, yeah, he's looking for a forward. I only have Middleton. Oosh. He's hurt again, etc. Kevin Herter. As your forwards, um, you might, um, okay, you might want to look into trading Duren plus somebody else and get somebody a little bit more low key, not as, because Ingram is still somebody who's valued too highly. Let's say go for Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown is so underrated, but he delivers, reasonably decent value. Um, Try to buy low, maybe on a Keegan Murray if you're lucky. Like Brewski, I'm one of the people who are really high on Murray. I like what I see from him, from his play. And mark my words, it's a matter of time until Harrison Barnes is offloaded some way, somehow. Okay. Um, so there. Unfortunately, I will not be able to provide a lot more of my waiver wire recommendations. I have to get back to my blurbing and writing for the site. But that said, thank you very much to everyone who's visited, asked questions, or lurked. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Um, Holler at me at Rotomancer. Um, whoops, at Rotomancer. Whoops, on Twitter. Likes to subscribe. Follow this show in particular because I'll always be here, um, to help you guys out, and it's something I enjoy. And because I think about the game of fantasy far too much than the average casual guy, um, I I got some interesting angles. So yeah, again, everyone, thank you for showing up tonight. I appreciate you all. Thanks for keeping me company. Um, and yeah, I will be ending it here because I have to get back to the wire. Uh, but yeah, I'll be back next week. It might not necessarily be on Sunday night, US time. It's like Monday morning here in the Philippines where I'm from. But we're trying to sort out the schedule with Ethan. I really enjoy doing these shows with Ethan, and I'm hoping to have a tag team effort soon. But stay tuned, okay? like, subscribe, so that whenever this show comes back on with Ethan, hopefully, you're gonna get both of us giving you quality advice straight from guys who really think too much about this game. Again, thank you for being here, and bye bye.